or you can see my breath. Note numbers. Note numbers are the numbers of the notes in our scale or in our key. Scale and key meaning almost exactly the same thing. So in a C major scale, we have note 1, which is a C. We work through the alphabet, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and we end up on another note C, an octave above. That octave above, oct stands for 8, and that's the 8th note. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is the same as C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So when we play music, think about music, and most importantly, notate music, we can either write it in letter form, as in C, F, G, etc., E, or we can write it in number form. In other words, 1, 4, 5, 7, 8, 6, 5, etc. Both are as valid as each other, but the more versatile method is the number system, because the number system never changes when we change key. If I change key from C major, for instance, to G major, if I've learnt the tune with regard to letter notes, C, D, E, C, C, D, E, C, I can't just use those same letter notes in another key, because letter notes are pitch specific. That means when we change key, which means changing the palette of notes that we use to make our tune, when we change key, we change all the letters as well. So C, D, E, C in G major becomes G, A, B, G. So we have to be aware of that. But the letter system evolved out of written notation, in other words, standard classical notation, which doesn't change. Once you've printed the music, it normally stays in the same key and everyone plays it as written. Whereas the more modern and the verbal way of communicating and the more versatile way of communicating, the more contemporary way, is simply to use note numbers. So if we have a tune like Frère Jacques, which starts off 1, 2, 3, 1, those numbers never change regardless of the key. All we have to do when we change key is make sure that we know the notes in the new key, and we can number them 1 to 8. For instance, in C major, as I've said, we have notes 1 to 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We practice that scale, that's why we practice the scale. So we learn the notes in the key. We can practice the scale with a mind to the letter notes, and we can practice the scale with a mind to the numbers. Classical musicians do this, even though they don't necessarily think like that when they're reading notation. When we practice, for instance, another scale like G major, we simply start on 1, and G is our new 1. So G is our first note in the scale, and that's our new 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So every time we play a new scale, we just count 1 to 8. Very simple. We can all count to 8. It involves a minimum of music theory, which is good. We don't want too much theory, but we want to understand what we're doing. So every time you play a scale, number it 1 to 8 and know what number you're on. Because if I know these numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I can play Frère Jacques in this new key because I know the new numbers. And the formula, which is the numbers is literally the formula to the melody. The formula for Frère Jacques is 1, 2, 3, 1 in any key. So in G major, it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1. 3, 4, 5, if I carry on, 3, 4, 5. If I know another key, the notes in another key, I simply play the same numbers in the new key. For instance, horrible key for guitar, but there you go, E flat major, E flat. The note numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, because they are always 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, but this time I'm starting on an E flat. That's the only letter I need to know. All I need to know is the start note when it comes to note numbers. The only letter note I need to know is the start note. So the start note is E flat, that's now my 1. I can forget about the letter now and just concentrate on the numbers. 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5. So immediately, once we learn a tune with note numbers, we can play the tune in every key for which we know the scale. And if we know a movable scale, that means by definition, we know the scale in every key. And how many keys are there? All sorts of rubbish talked on the internet about how many keys there are. Silly question. How many frets have we got in the octave? 12. So there are 12 keys. We have 12 notes, from an E to an E, for instance, or a G to a G, or a note 1 to a note 8. They all mean the same. 12 frets means 12 different starting points, means 12 different keys. So there are 12 major keys. Obviously, we can change the type of scale. There are 12 major keys, 12 minor keys, 12 harmonic minor keys, for instance, 12 melodic minor keys, whatever scale or key you're particularly talking about. But for most of us in the real world, most of the time we're talking about major keys and we're talking about natural minor keys. That's it. Harmonic minor, yes, now and again, but most of the time, certainly with popular music, we're talking about major most of the time, but also natural minor. And then the other more exotic minor keys come later on. But even so, we've still only got 12 of them. So if we limit ourselves to major keys and minor keys, we've got 12 major and 12 minor, which is 24, of course, if my maths is correct. Maths is harder in the cold, evidently. So our note numbers, if we know different scales, we simply number the notes. These are often called degrees of the scale. A degree of the scale is a note number. The reason I call them note numbers is it's the simplest way. And the simplest way is always the best way. Degrees of the scale, yes, fine. Note 1 is the first degree of the scale, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, fine. It's easier saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or 1, 8, 7, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hopefully we can all count, so we can all number our notes. Anyone that can play a scale can number their notes, regardless of what the scale is. It doesn't even matter whether I know the letter notes. If I start here, I don't even need to know that note. But if I know a major pattern starting on that note, I can number it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's a major scale pattern, hence, by definition, those must be the note numbers. Start on 1, finish on 8. And of course, 1 to 8 is always the octave. Playing on octaves on guitar is very simple. We simply move the 1s and the 8s around. So I'm simply sticking to my gap, or interval is the correct musical term for the gap between two notes. That interval is an eighth, or an octave, because it's note 1 to note 8. So note numbers also open up the idea of intervals. So an interval is a gap between two note numbers. 1 to 5 is the interval of a fifth. So if you hear guitarists talking about fifth chords, what they mean is just a chord based on two notes, note 1 and note 5. That's it, with note 1 being the name of the chord. Those were all fifth chords, 1, 5. But we've got the major third, which is 1 and 3 together, 1 and 3, 1 and 5. We can put major 7 over the 1, 1 and the 7, etc. 6. Those are intervals. So intervals come directly from the idea of note numbers. That's it, really. Every tune in the world can be written in note numbers. And I'll say again, once you learn the note numbers to a tune, you don't need to learn them again, because they never change. So it's the best way of remembering melodies, because you've only got to remember it once. All you've got to do is remember the numbers. And most tunes will start off either on, how can I put it? Most tunes, firstly, note 1 is probably the note that most tunes start on average, but that's only a very loose average. But it gives you an idea of what note you might start on. Certainly if the first chord in a tune is called 1, then you're very likely to be starting on note 1, note 3 or note 5 of those 8 numbers, because note 1, note 3 and note 5 define chord 1. A little extension into chord numbers. Chord numbers are the same as note numbers, but instead of them being simply a single note, like a single note, a single note, a single note. Chord numbers tell you that each number has a chord built on it. So in G major, note 1 is a G, by definition. If you only play single notes like a clarinet, then that's all you need to know. Note 1 is that, but chord 1 is the chord built on note 1. So a chord built on a G is called a major chord. So the major chord is a combination of notes 1, 3 and 5. That's what a major chord is. It's note 1, note 3 and note 5, with note 1 being the name of the chord. So in G major, the chord, note 1, is called the root note. And on top of that we have 3 and 5. So if you know the open G shape, there we are, open G chord. In G major, that's chord 1. That is named, I nearly said that is called chord. That is named chord 1 in G major because the key is G, which we've just said. Therefore, it is chord 1 because it is built on note 1. So, if we're talking about a monophonic instrument and we say play notes 1, 4, 5, we're only talking about single notes because that's all we can play. But if we're talking about a polyphonic instrument like guitar, piano, the two main ones, 1, 4, 5 can also mean the chords as well. So if we say chords 1, 4, 5, we can play 4, 5, 1, 4, 5. And the root note to each of those chords is the same as what I did before, 1, 4, 5. If I add a chord onto those notes, we've got chord 1, chord 4, chord 5. That's about it really. There's music theory in a nutshell, there's note numbers in a nutshell, and intervals in a nutshell, and pretty much else. And I'm just about to go away and warm up a bit because it's still damn freezing in here, actually everywhere in the whole house. Oh, I'm going to put my heating on one of these days. Next time I'll be wearing gloves. Bye-bye.